Hey guys, this is Justin at the Survivor Review, and today we'll be talking about the newest film from the DC Extended Universe, Shazam. Now, ever since this movie was announced, I was always kind of like, why are you doing this one? Like, I've never had any problem with Shazam as a character, but I was always thinking, like, with all of the vast array of DC characters that you want to adapt into a movie, including some really big-name ones that still haven't gotten their own, like, standalone movie, why would you choose Shazam? It's such a random choice. But after seeing this movie, I'm so glad they did, because this movie was a blast. Like, I honestly really like this movie. I thought it was pretty great, which really surprised me. Coming off of Aquaman, which I really enjoyed, this continues DC's streak of good movies, which is such a great thing. Like, I've always wanted to see great DC movies, and wasn't getting that at the start of the DCEU, but it seems to have found its footing a little bit more. And like, I know you can complain and say, oh, they're just trying to copy Marvel. They're doing Marvel movies. Like, it's a lot brighter now, there's a lot more humor. But the thing is, it works. And if it works, you know, just do it. Like, clearly the other films were not working with like the super dark and dreary stuff with like Batman vs Superman stuff. So of course they're gonna make it lighter, and this definitely works. Like, this movie has so much heart and is so genuine. Like, I can easily compare this to Wonder Woman, and that's similar to that, where it has like the hearts and the like the genuine kind of earnestness to it. And that's what this movie really feels like. It harkens more to Wonder Woman compared to, like, you know, Aquaman, which is just this like crazy, insane spectacle. This movie's not that. It's a lot smaller, it's a lot more intimate, like with its characters. It still has big, you know, over-the-top, like, action sequences, but it never goes too crazy with it. It still has, like, a very kind of grounded story, like, with the characters and, like, dealing with kids and foster families and moving to foster homes and dealing with, like, your real parents and that kind of stuff. It deals with a lot of that stuff, and it does it very well. All of the acting in this movie, I thought, was really good. All the kids are really good. The two main kids, the kids who play Billy Batson, and the kid who plays Freddy, who was the same actor who played Eddie in It, who I thought was like the standout guy in It. I thought he was like the best part of that movie. He's great in here too. Like, the kids sell it very well. And then you get Zachary Levi as Shazam, who is just obviously having a blast with the role and having so much fun in the part. But the best part is that, like, you buy it. He takes the role seriously enough and is so, like, earnest with it that you totally buy it into it. It doesn't come off as like parody or as being like super like over the top or silly. Like, you don't believe it, you buy into it. And he is so great in the movie. He's so funny. There's a lot of really good humor in this movie. Though, I will say that kind of leads to like a flaw, is that I don't think all the humor works. And I don't think all the jokes quite land. There's a fair amount of them that kind of fall flats. But when it works, it's really funny. It's really charming. Like, that's the best thing about this movie, that it's a charming movie.
I'd like to purchase some of your finest beer, please.
You know, like I said, it doesn't try to be anything too big than what it really is, and that's the best part about it. And like, it really shows the joy of being a superhero, and it brings you back to like when you were a kid and like, you know, you're talking to your friends about like what superpower you would have and stuff like that, and how you would react if you were a superhero. Like, it really plays into that, and I think that's the strength of the movie. That's the strongest like strength of the film, is that it really just plays into that kind of like childlike fun of being a superhero, and that comes off onto the audience, because like, I had a big smile on my face during a lot of this movie. I had a lot of fun with it. Now, like I briefly mentioned earlier, it does have flaws. Like I said, some of the humor doesn't quite land, and then like you get to the villain, who was played by Mark Strong. And first off, it's Mark Strong, so he's great because he's just great in everything. But the villain itself, is kind of weak. Like, his motivation and his plan isn't quite clear, and you know, it's very kind of basic. So, not the greatest villain. Like, I would have liked like a much meatier role for Mark Strong to play, since he's such a good actor. Like, he could play like a great badass villain, and in this he comes off as like, alright, not the worst. Like, I've seen much worse villains in comic book movies. But I just feel like, I don't know, there wasn't as much to him. Not the best, like I said, you know, decent, but could have been a little bit better. And also, there is some dodgy CGI here and there, like some flying stuff that looks really kind of cartoony, which you can't, like, totally dock the movie for that, because the movie was a lower budget, especially, like, for a comic book movie. Like, I think think it still costs like 90 million, which I know is not cheap for a movie, but for a comic book movie, that's pretty cheap. And for the most part, the movie looked really good. Like, the production value in the movie looked really good. Like I said, a few CGI effects here and there that didn't quite look up to par, but for the most part, you know, it looks pretty good for its budgets. Just, I find it funny, like, the thing I said when I walked out of the movie was, like, I think DC has found its new formula in that they hire a horror director to make their comic book movie. Because coming off of James Wan in Aquaman, and now David Sandberg with this, like, they did fantastic jobs on both of their films. David Sandberg is the director of Annabelle Creation and Lights Out. And he did this, and he did a great job with it. Like, I really liked it. I even like how he brought some of his kind of horror sensibilities. Like, there's a couple, I mean, it's not a lot in the movie. The movie's very, you know, silly and bright, but, like, there is some kind of dark moments here and there, and, like, one scene in particular that, like, if you added in some blood, it would be straight out of a horror movie, you know? And I was like, I like that scene a lot, but I just like that as, like, he was bringing his horror sensibilities to this movie. Same thing with James Wan and some stuff in Aquaman as well. I like when they sprinkle that in there. Just, I think, kind of adds a bit more style and adds a bit more, like, personality to the movies when they add their own little, like, horror styles into it. I think that's actually really good, but I just find that funny how our two most recent DC movies have both had horror directors do them, and they both turned out really good. I also like to note that actor John Glover is in this movie, who's a great actor. Like, I primarily know him from Smallville, where he played Lionel Luthor. Like, that show was like a childhood favorite of mine, and he was great on that show. He's one of the best parts of it, and I just like seeing him in here. Like, I like seeing him in a movie. I haven't really seen him in much lately since Smallville ended, you know? And I just like that. I don't know, just small little things, small little shout out. I just like seeing him in here because he's just an awesome actor. On a structure level, I will say structurally, I think this movie is the strongest out of the DC movies. Because, you know, putting aside the, like, the bad ones, like, even I feel like the good ones have some problems. Like, Wonder Woman, you know, has fantastic first two acts, but the third act kind of falls apart. And then Aquaman, you know, it's kind of overstuffed and a little kind of muddled sometimes with some things. But I feel like this one was the most structurally sound movie where all three acts work. And, like, you know, the third act doesn't get, like, all caught up in CGI muck and stuff. Like, there's still, like, of course, like, silly comic book style action sequences, but it just doesn't get all, like, CGI heavy and, like, green screen heavy. It also doesn't kind of, like, drop the ball on, like, payoff with characters and stuff like that, especially with some characters. Like, in the third act, there is payoff with a lot of stuff. So I feel like from a structure level, it's the strongest movie out of all the DC movies. Granted, like, this one, it's a little bit easier for this one because it's a smaller scale movie compared to the other DC films. And as of, like, is this the best one or is it better than, like, Wonder Woman and stuff like that? I can't quite say, because I just got out of seeing this movie earlier, you know? So it's still fresh in my mind. Like, I'm not really going to compare it there and say for sure which one's better. But I will say definitely, like, this and Wonder Woman are probably the two strongest ones. And then Aquaman's, like, right under that. I really like Aquaman, even though it's not really a great movie. Aquaman is just a very entertaining movie, if that makes any sense. Like, I just love the bonkers craziness of it. But from, like, a story standpoint, Wonder Woman and Shazam are usually, like, the top two, I would say. For the most part, this movie is standalone. There are some nods here and there to the larger DC universe. Mostly, I kind of played for laughs and stuff. But I like that. Like, I really like the Freddy character, how he's, like, obsessed with superheroes and knows all this stuff. Like, he has a replica Batarang, and he also has, like, a bullet that was shot at Superman. And I just like all that stuff. I like the Freddy character. I just thought he was a really entertaining character. So it has some good nods here and there to the larger DC universe without, like, trying too hard to kind of, like, connect all the movies. It does it in a way that's, like, unique because it plays off the superheroes basically how they are right now in pop culture, whereas they're, like, popular characters. Like, you see Freddy constantly walking around wearing, like, Batman and Aquaman shirts and, like, has a Superman backpack, and you see a scene in a toy store where there's a bunch of, like, superhero, like, Batman toys and stuff. So it kind of plays off of that, and I thought that was kind of a unique take on it compared to just, like, trying to throw in, like, a reference to a DC character without it feeling, like, forced. This kind of did it in a way that was kind of unique and fresh. And I think that's what I really liked about this movie. Like, sure, sometimes, you know, maybe the action scenes between, like, between Shazam and the Mark Strong villain, them kind of flying around turns into something you've seen before. It kind of looks similar to like Man of Steel maybe, but for the most part it's like a unique kind of fresh take on this. It helps that the superhero is like a unique type of superhero, like a kid who can turn into a superhero. So that helps in the movie's favor, but they definitely take full advantage of that. Now I'm gonna say this, but I'm not trying to start anything. I'm not trying to like be controversial or trying to get into political stuff or trying to like heavily compare this. I'm just comparing this because it's like the last Marvel movie that came out. But to be honest, I actually kind of enjoyed this movie more than Captain Marvel, which was a movie I did legit enjoy. Actually, I really enjoyed Captain Marvel. I just didn't think it was great by any means. And I'm not trying to start a whole thing. I'm not trying to be like, oh, this Captain Marvel is better than the other Captain Marvel. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying because Captain Marvel was the most recent Marvel movie, and I just find it surprising that the most recent DC movie I liked better than the recent Marvel movie. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to get into anything. I'm not trying to start anything. I don't know. I really liked this movie. I had a lot of fun with it. Like I said, it has a lot of good, genuine heart in it. It harkens back to Wonder Woman and the more optimistic and fun and more positive type of comic book movie. Even though I really liked Aquaman and Shazam, I'm still not going to say the DC has completely found its footing, because they're still kind of all over the place with like announcing future projects. And like, I mean, they're in good hands with some stuff. Like you have James Gunn's Suicide Squad, which I'm really interested in. But like the next DC movie is Birds of Prey, or basically the Harley Quinn movie, which, yeah, I'm not really that interested in that. I don't know how that's going to turn out. But I'm saying if DC sticks to like the formula of these two movies, if it sticks to like the genuine heart and joy of Shazam, but also has like kind of the bonkers, like just embracing the source material and going all in of Aquaman, and just kind of does a mixture of like those two for their future movies from now on, then they should be in good hands. They should be able to pull off like a good slate of entertaining comic book movies, which I really hope they do, because like these are good kind of starting off points for kind of like the rebrand of DC, like post Justice League and post like Snyderverse, you know? This is a good start, and this was, like I said, really entertaining movie. I highly recommend it. Had a blast with it. Had a great time with these characters and was like genuinely invested in it. I just thought it was really good. A lot better than I was expecting it to be.
You leave tall buildings in a single bound.
So overall, that's Shazam. Just such a wonderful movie. Like I said, it has its flaws. It's not perfect. You know, some of the humor doesn't quite land. Villain is a little weak. But it makes up for it for just this like genuine, heart-filled just like movie. It's just a ton of fun. It's so entertaining. I love Zachary Levi as the character. I love actually most of the characters in this movie. They're all fantastic. And it just makes for a very entertaining movie that, like I said, surprised me. Like I was like, why would DC make a Shazam movie? There's really no need to. But they did, and it worked, which is surprising. So yeah, that's Shazam, and that's all I have to say for now. So until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.